Shake, rattle, and roll. Now, that's not Bill Haley in the Comets if you're old enough to know what that is, but that was said by the late Columbia Command Module pilot Michael Collins in describing the Saturn V rocket liftoff of Apollo 11's mission to the moon. He said, "We're off, and do we know it? Not just because the world is yelling liftoff in our ears, but because the seats of our pants are telling us so. Trust your instruments, not your body," the modern pilot is always told. But this beast must be felt. Now, with these words, Collins, who passed away in April, expressed what every airline pilot knows instinctively, the priceless value of personal experience. It's the knowledge that comes only from direct participation and observation. And it is the collective experience of the aviation workforce that has made flying so safe in the United States and in Canada. Making certain that an experienced pilot workforce would be ready to drive a rapid and strong economic recovery is one of the reasons ALPA fought so hard for the U.S. government to create and then extend the payroll support program. Not once, not twice, 3 times. I'd say that was pretty successful. Saving pilot jobs and preserving pilot careers was just as important. The memory of what happened to airline workers 9/11 is painfully real for ALPA pilots, and our union vowed to never, ever let it happen again. Many of our pilots still on the properties gave everything they could to save their airlines, including giving up their retirement security to save their airlines and their profession. We never want that to happen again. And so we did good on the fact that we were able to get the most forward-leaning, pro-labor, pro-worker legislation ever passed in the history of America. It's really incredible. However, the bankruptcy laws are still weak, so we have to work on those. And I've been working with the chairman in both houses on that. But when the PSP was originally became law in March of 2020, it contained important protections that prevented airline pilot furloughs, and protections that this union fought hard to have included. Now, when the PSP was extended for the 3rd time until the end of September, the law contained even tougher pro-worker rules. And thanks to ALPA's advocacy, the program now does even more to protect workers by prohibiting airlines that receive PSP support from furloughing employees as long as the carrier possesses PSP funds. That is a big difference from the first time around. And we made that argument from the beginning. If that, from all the changes, all those LOAs that you work so hard to do, working with your companies, obviously made the money stretch a bit longer. We wanted to make sure that footprint for furlough protection went along with it. So we got that in. And when there was pushback, trust me, there was a lot of pushback on that. But make no mistake, this accomplishment was not easy. And it didn't happen by accident. Each of you made it happen. We made that happen. The PAC helped make that happen. And I can't, if you're a U.S. pilot, not Canadians, hold your ears for a second here. If that isn't evidence enough of how important it is, if you want to talk about the value of the PAC, just look at the last 3 extensions. Do the math. And Bob and I have been working together to try to impress upon everybody how ugly this would have looked if I don't have that access, if Bob and I don't have that access, and the other national officers. Trust me, we all know we have great personalities, right? People want to talk to us, right? But not that much. They don't like us that much, right? But we do have an extraordinary level of access. There's just no question about it. We have friends on Capitol Hill, and those that may not necessarily be aligned with us, right? We still work with them as well. We're issues-oriented. Doesn't matter. You help us out with an issue, you're our friend. You don't, we'll make you our friend. I mean, that really comes down to that. All I'm saying is teamwork makes the dream work here, folks. I mean, this is really what it's all about, all right? And I got to tell you, I'm off script here. Here I'm going. They love it when I do that. Look, I got to tell you, think about who gave us help. Tell me somebody who gave us help, right? Okay, I just mentioned the folks that we were able to get on our side, and they there's some champions out there. There's some real champions out there. Pete DeFazio, the chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, I think he calls me more than I call him. And he's just a wonderful human being, right? And that goes actually for people on both sides of the aisle. Brian Fitzpatrick comes to mind, for security, John Katko. I mean, really, we are bipartisan. There's no doubt about it. But you know what we got? This is how much help we got from our regulators. Right there. Right there. We knew the way to do this, okay? We know what's best for our aircraft and our crews and our passengers and our cargo. We know. We do it every single day, all right? Could I get help? No. So what did we do? We fell back on the quintessential core component of what formed this union in the first place. We joined arms together. And I witnessed amongst you here, and my hat's off to all of you, or to ones that were here anyway at the time, you did some amazing work on those LOAs. Really creative stuff. And you know what I really liked about it the most? And I think in the UAL particular agreement, because one of the first ones, but followed on by Delta and the others, is that it wasn't the old style of addressing problems. They knew this was a limited problem, right? That there was going to be an end to this. So instead of going strict seniority in terms of issues and making those determinations, we joined arms together. We joined arms together. We fell back on one another, and it made all the difference in the world. So. And I got to mention this too. In fact, ALPA pilots and their professional staff, because this is the truth about, I don't know if there's pilots out there that might think that this was easy. It wasn't. It took everything. It took everything and a tremendous amount of focus to get this done. I'm telling you're an MEC chairman, you know this anyway, but for the sake of those listening, we fought off many attempts to weaken PSP or outright get rid of it. There were people that didn't want it to happen again. And it wasn't because they didn't care about pilots, to be honest with you. People love pilots. Lawmakers love pilots. They just don't like the companies we work for. Sometimes we find, we're in alignment on that. But for the most part, right, we like to work with our managements and for the betterment of the company and our futures, right? But our pilot partisan advocacy helped block multiple amendments that were designed to undermine the law and harm workers, us in particular. Now, so the reason for this success that each of you has made possible, is ALPA's credibility with lawmakers and regulators. When they see you coming, they know you're going to speak the truth. And if it wasn't for the Air Safety Organization, too, within our union, really, I got to tell you, it lends a lot of credibility to what we do, or else we would be just another union that just really is interested only in the industrial thing. So there's a respectful firewall between the industrial and what we do in safety. But I have to say, we get a lot of respect for it. With that comes a little mileage. So, but that credibility is built on our members' vast range of expertise across every area of our industry. We'll hear more tomorrow from ALPA pilot and member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Kai Kahele. When Kai was a Hawaiian pilot, I think he's the first, we'll hear more about, but the first Hawaiian to be a native Hawaiian to be elected. The story, if you read about it with his dad, was a really touching story. But as soon as he came into town, we ran out, grabbed dinner together. What a great human being. And we helped to get him on the House T&I, which is great. So he will be working on our issues. Very knowledgeable, obviously. Just an outstanding individual, but you'll get to meet him here. We asked him if he'd come by, and he wanted to do it personally, not virtually. So hopefully that'll all work out. So, in talking about the Apollo 11 mission, Michael Collins said, "This trip of ours to the moon may have looked to you simple and easy. All you see here is the three of us, but beneath the surface are thousands and thousands of others. And to all of those, I'd like to say," and he was always respectful and rather understated, "thank you very much." I feel the same is true when it comes to ALPA's committees and volunteers, including so many of you as well, because not only did you contribute as master chairman, but you gave me some really talented people to work on these committees. And I got to tell you, those are the unsung heroes of this pandemic. So please, talk to your committee members. I thank you so much for giving them to us, but seriously, the tremendous amount of work, and I know we got one over here, Brian Noyes, thank you, I see you here. I don't know if anybody here is from any other committees here, but look, they were on it from day one. You know, on the ASO side of the house, on the PA side of the house in particular, dealing with people who were, some of them in many cases dying, sick from the virus. Just tremendous work. Truly, we owe them on behalf of all the 59,000 members or more now, thanks to Greg over there. We have a few more than that. We really do owe them a debt of gratitude. They do a great job. But from safety and security to fair competition and contract negotiations and workers' rights, ALPA's 90 years of expertise mean that our union is not only familiar, but expertly informed on virtually every aviation topic. You know, I thought I knew a lot about this before I became, got involved on a national level. But every day that goes by, I'm not just saying it, it's the truth. I learned more about what this association has done throughout my career. It's just been incredible. It's like a bubble that's around you. I mean, there's so many people working on your behalf. And if the only thing that was necessary to win all the time was being right, you can honestly say we're right all the time. There's no question that we're right about an issue, right? I mean, we're dealing with safety, security, and workers' rights and dealing, what we know on the right side. So what's the difference, right? What's the push that's needed? And it's the unity that we show. And it's the PAC support. And it's all those components that push these things over the top. So you're going to see demonstrated in reports tomorrow from Captain Rich Huey, Chair of the President's Committee for Cargo, and Captain Brian Noyes, Chair of the ALPA Flight Time Duty Committee. Just a little taste of what they're doing. We're trying on all the EBs. This was Bob, that was a great idea. Bob's idea to try to rotate through the committee chairs at each of our meetings so you get a little sense. Not that you don't know, but it's always good to hear directly from them, and it's good for them, too, to come before the group. So, equally important, because of our credibility, ALPA members demonstrate in every encounter with lawmakers and regulators exactly why it's essential to include us in developing and implementing air transportation and aviation labor policy. Our people are behind doors with those lawmakings, helping them develop language. We're in. That's how close we are with them. In my humble opinion, particularly with the new administration, everything positive they said about labor so far, and unions in particular, which I was happy to hear, it is my opinion that labor, collective bargaining in general, is absolutely essential to building back aviation better, using their terms, right, using their tagline, after COVID, post-COVID. I mean, we got to see the weaknesses. Remember when we took over, gentleman to my left here, in 2019, you couldn't get enough pilots through the door, right? What did we start talking about? We started talking about the difficulties of the fee for departure carriers and how unstable that whole work model is. And everybody was like, wow, yeah, but everything's great right now. Look how many people are getting hired. We'll be in and out. No, I think when COVID came along was a real eye-opener again to say, what's wrong? Look at you. If you're an express jet pilot, you could have a PhD, all right? You could have done everything right in your career. You could have been ready to go and move up to a major, right? And you get the rug pulled out from under you. So when we talk about pilot supply, and this was my expert, Paul Ryder, and Bill from the PDG, Professional Development Group, there's a fundamental problem there, and I've been talking about it, and I talked about it at the recent T&I hearing, that's the choke point. So when people look to come to this profession, what do they really see? If you're risk experts, so, once they start realizing what the risk is and how much money they're going to have to pay to get in this profession, only to have the rug ripped out from under them, I won't have a conversation with lawmakers or anybody unless we're talking about the truth. So let's talk. You want to talk about pilot supply? Let's talk about pilot supply, the real fundamental problem. So, and we've been working on solutions. So, is Scott in here? Paul? Scott McCormick? Hey, Scott's my fee for departure chairman, doing a hell of a job, too. He's doing a great job from PSA. Thank you. All right. During ALPA's recent Aviation Week, Policy Week in March, I don't know if you caught that. It was a whole week-long effort. Our union released its newest white paper. It's the best piece of work I think I've seen in my 35 years. Battling the pandemic, rebuilding our economy, and connecting the world. If you haven't gotten a copy of it, it's online. I beg you to look at it. I think every pilot should be carrying it around either digitally or paper, talk about it in the cockpits. But it really lays out from A to Z all our positions, even the small ones. I mean, it's really an incredible piece of work. I've gotten so many compliments on the Hill about it. And then in that paper, we lay out our pilot partisan agenda to defeat COVID-19 while ensuring safe air transportation, protecting workers and labor rights, and expanding opportunities in the aviation workforce for all individuals. During the week, our union shared our white paper in every manner and media. 80 ALPA pilots participated in a virtual meet and greet session with 26 newly elected lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. We thought that since the new Congress was coming in, they were right. So we wanted to make sure that they got the word directly from us before they heard what we represent from others. They needed to hear it from the horse's mouth. It was a very informative session on many. It was kind of extended over the week, but it was really rewarding. As a member of the AFL-CIO's Transportation Trades Department Executive Committee, I also took the opportunity to highlight ALPA's policy agenda during a call with White House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Department of Transportation Deputy Secretary Polly Trottenberg, and Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, as I mentioned before, a Republican lawmaker from Pennsylvania who's a strong ALPA champion. I framed the importance of ensuring a fair opportunity for U.S. workers to compete internationally and called for aviation safety and security improvements, including flight deck barriers for passenger and all cargo aircraft. And even before the white paper's release, ALPA pilots and staff continued working to connect and cultivate our relationships with D.C. lawmakers and decision makers. In February, Captain Joseph Genovese and I, ALPA's Vice President and Finance Treasurer, and I joined 30 pilots, New York pilots, to meet virtually with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who invited ALPA constituents to discuss the importance of PSP and how the COVID-19 continues to affect our pilots. I remember that conversation. That was a good one. It was right after the January 6th incident, so it was a lively discussion, but he's out there swinging for us as well. So. But from the onset of the pandemic, ALPA has been resolutely focused on protecting our members' health. As you know, we were one of the first organizations to call for the U.S. government to require passengers to wear masks in all U.S. airports and onboard airliners. We issued this call to protect the traveling public as well as our members who have, since the start of the pandemic, put their own health at risk to fulfill airline pilots' essential role in transporting personnel, equipment, and now vaccines. Now, that was difficult to take in the beginning because when I saw what our pilots were doing, all your pilots were doing, on the line every day, the number of people who were coming up positive, and thanks to our DART report system, we were able to keep a finger on the pulse of what was going on. The frustration of not being able to get some common sense help wasn't good. At the same time, we were all conscious of the fact too, like, the public is witnessing a patchwork, a varying patchwork of different solutions or mitigations. Made no sense to them. They didn't even know it. We're involved in aviation. It was hard to keep up in the beginning of what airline was doing what. Some were doing better than others, right? But we needed a little help. The great thing is we were right about it. They eventually saw the light, and they started to adapt a more uniform approach to all this. But we didn't think it should be competitive either, really. I mean, you shouldn't compete on safety. We never want to compete on safety. But for this reason, ALPA was pleased when the TSA administration issued a directive in February, just past February, mandating compliance with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, requiring the public use of face masks during air travel. And we welcomed that extension as well. So, meanwhile, we continue to advocate in Ottawa for the Canadian government to support its aviation sector and its employees. The situation is completely different north of the border right now. And while we're pleased that the Canadian government extended the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program until September the 25th of 2021, the budget released by the Canadian government contained no specific support for the aviation sector. ALPA is urging the Prime Minister and his government to support the aviation sector and the tens of thousands of Canadians that it employs. ALPA's Save Canadian Aviation campaign, carried out on social media, in news interviews, and with paid advertising, has prompted ALPA pilots in Canada and the United States to send hundreds of letters and more than 2,000 social media messages to lawmakers in Ottawa, hoping that we can drive that home. Now, as many of you know, Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins was a fighter pilot and an experimental test pilot. And I'm sure many of us intuitively understand the saying in flight tests that goes, you can't go flying until the weight of the paper equals the weight of the airplane. And these days, the paper represents the analysis and evaluation of every factor, every risk, and every contingency involved in a flight. Drawing for our union's 9 decades of experience, I feel confident that no one assesses every angle of a situation more thoroughly and thoughtfully than ALPA's national and MEC pilot leaders, committee volunteers, and our professional staff. From flight time, duty time, and training, to retirement benefits and contract negotiations, the depth of our union's expertise on aviation issues is simply beyond compare. In just one example, with the support of our National Collective Bargaining Committee and professional staff, and your help as well, ALPA MECs have negotiated, ready, 127 agreements since the pandemic took effect in March of 2020, with a focus on protecting pilot health and financial security. 127. You know, if you think about how many agreements we do in a typical year, and the stresses and strains on the system, and having to do this, and wear a mask, and hold the meetings virtually, that's a pretty incredible achievement. That's an amazing achievement. I think we should all be pretty proud of ourselves for this one. I think we're just, we're pilots. We get an emergency, the lights go on. If it's not a V1 cut, we need to stop on a rudder or anything like that. We just kind of lean back, wind to watch, right? Look for secondaries, try to figure out what we're going to do, discuss it with the crew, and move on. But, and maybe it is because we are risk experts, really. We're expert risk managers, really, truthfully. We just handle it. And which underscores my whole thing is people should listen more, and they do, but we know how to do this. So, but look into the future, because that's what we want to do. Past is past, we're looking to the future. We're making sure that our union builds on the long tradition by informing, equipping, and training ALPA's newest leaders. For example, in February, we held our leadership training conference virtually. That was fun, Bill. That was a challenge, but we did a pretty good job. It was overseen by Captain Bill Couette, our ALPA Vice President of Admin Secretary, but it was really, really well done, extraordinarily well done. Thank you, Marie, too. Marie Schwartz, fantastic job from the SIMDAR. SIMDAR folks did a great job. We also hosted for the first time our newly created foundational ALPA service training fast course for new Air Safety Organization volunteers. Now, you may not know what that is, but prior to the creation of Section 85, which is the Air Safety Organization, right? If you remember, there were separate committees. Safety was different from security, from PA to everything. They were all separate. We brought it under one umbrella. But the training programs were still as if you were making your first move into the safety realm. I always felt like if somebody's coming into the ASO, how do they know where they want to serve? That some of them might know, and they might think that's interesting, but then they hear something about PA and go, I might be able to, might be interested in doing that as well. So Bob's got that all wrapped up now with a really great program. The team that's put that together has done just a fantastic job. And these are just little examples, right? But they have a great impact. But the scope of the training programs that ALPA offers to our members, I think said that we do about 8,000 hours of training in a given year. It's a tremendous amount of training. Now, at the same time, ALPA's newest leaders and most seasoned veterans continue our union's work to advance our members' goals in safety, security, pilot's assistance, and jump seat access as laid out in our ALPA strategic plan, because we don't do anything that's not laid out in ALPA's strategic plan. Now, in aviation security, Captain Bob Fox, ALPA's first vice president, national safety coordinator, participated in a virtual aviation stakeholder security roundtable hosted by Representative John Katko, a Republican from New York, in a discussion that was designed to focus on security policy changes during the pandemic. I guess I don't have to tell you, you probably heard from your folks. Some of the passengers were a bit tense at times. Sometimes their behavior wasn't too good. You know, by the time they get through security, got masks on, throw a little alcohol in there, you know, people weren't as relaxed as maybe they once were before. A lot going on politically as well, so just a volatile mixture sometimes. But, you know, look, we dealt with that too, and we worked with lawmakers, and now we have a much more strongly enforced set of precautions in place on giving crews the tools they need so that they know they're backed up if they have disruptive passengers, which is a good move. But now we are always looking for how to deliver new value to our members. So this one I love because this was something I tried to get launched when I was NSC. I couldn't get an ear for this, but it's really working out pretty nice. But it was ALPA's Flight Finder, okay? So on the ALPA app, you have the ALPA Flight Finder now, right? It's a jump seat tool. And all you do is put in your departure and your destination, you'll get every, you know, available flight that's in the database, which are most of them. I think the only one we might not have is UPS, I believe. I'll have to talk to my wife about that. But anyway, yeah, so the great thing is we're starting to do increases, you know, betterments of the technology itself. Like, for instance, if they use My ID Travel, say, for instance, I didn't want them to have to go to another page to make the reservation. I want you to be able to pick the flight, touch it, and then take you to the link so that you can have a reservation. Not everybody uses that. Some companies we're going to need to go to and see if they'll share some of their data and allow us to make reservations right into the system. But it's been a huge success. I mean, it's just absolutely wild. And I know since this is not being broadcast, I'll just say it. Think of the amazing tools that it's going to offer you, MEC Chairman, because now that you know that your line pilots are going to an app to get value, right, you are able to do messaging as well to your pilots directly, and so am I. And when we go to phase 2 and we open this up to other non-ALPA groups or non-union groups, it's not necessarily going to be free. Okay, what it's going to be is you'll have to provide a significant amount of information. It's like, you know, you use a free app, you got to put up with the banner ads. But my hope is that when they see what you're doing, for your pilots, and what we're trying to do up here in National, the best thing I could imagine happening is, why aren't we doing that? Why isn't my union doing that? Or why aren't we unionized, perhaps, or whatever? So it's going to be really a strong tool. But so since we launched this thing in the app, this capability in the app, you know, it's really, again, designed to give primarily the value to our members, right, to get them, help them with commute going to work and going home, all right? But since the launch, ALPA pilots have conducted more than 270,000 searches, and that's probably old data right now. So it's been a huge success. But in other ways, and at every level, national, MEC, and local ALPA is here to help and ensure that pilots are mentally and physically prepared to perform their jobs. Getting into the PA side here for a second. But ALPA recently hosted, I think for the first time, our 2021 HIMSS Basic Training Seminar, both virtually and in person, which attracted more than 500 total attendees for 15 countries. And you know how they're saying we're learning things about virtually? I think that helped with the attendance, actually, because some people that couldn't be here, that wanted to be here internationally to watch that and couldn't travel, they were able to join in. So I think when we do our Air Safety Forum, soiree, as we hope that to be our coming out big event, I think doing a combination would be good to get other international audiences, help them see it. And in more safety work, as a member of the FAA's Drone Advisory Committee, I led an industry-wide effort in 2020 to establish a proactive safety culture in the Remotely Piloted Aircraft System, or RPAS community. That's the way it's referred to internationally, RPAS. During the DAC's recent meeting, the FAA, and this was rare, agreed with all of the recommendations that ALPA made. Not just some, that hardly ever happens. So we got a lot of buy-in. And That safety culture task group will remain functional and will keep going throughout the history, hopefully, of the Drone Advisory Committee in an effort to expand our proactive safety culture across the entire UAS industry. Now, given the new and expanding number of users of the national airspace, including RPAS, as well as commercial spaceflight, which is something that we've now been involved in, and the related issues, such as the recent increased drone sightings at LA, you've probably heard about that, and now deorbiting space debris that we saw in Washington State. A data-driven, proactive safety culture will be critical to protecting all who depend on air transportation. So, our mission, safe integration for all users of the airspace, similar to what we do at the same standard. Now, it's also important to remember that during our 90 years, ALPA has helped develop new technologies and procedures that not only advance a proactive safety culture, but also promote environmental sustainability. And one way that ALPA is working to address climate change is through our participation on the FAA's Next Gen Advisory Committee. As many of you know, Next Gen uses satellite-based navigation and surveillance to create enhanced operating procedures and more direct routes. The result? Reduction in CO2 emissions while improving safety. So when you're doing all these PBN arrivals and things like that, you have increased predictability. Hopefully when everybody's got ADS-B, that'll help as well. But the increased predictability, knowing where everybody's at in the airspace, will obviously increase SA, increases safety. So ALPA is no less committed to advancing the piloting career. And in the United States, we have supported legislation to help our members keep more of their earnings and contribute more to their retirement savings. I just recently spoke to the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Representative Richard Neal from Massachusetts, who is working hard to help us save more of our own money and improve the security of our retirement plans. So, more broadly, ALPA has not let up in calling on the U.S. government to require the Department of Transportation to prioritize American workers' rights in joint venture and foreign air carrier service agreements to ensure fair wages and working conditions for U.S. workers. That is a huge priority right now. There's a tremendous amount of work being done on that, and now we do have an ear in D.C. on this one, so I'm hoping for good things there. Now, at the same time, we're continuing our staunch opposition to airlines with flag of convenience business models that are designed to undermine workers and our rights. And we'll hear more on the international issues affecting airline pilots from Captain Bob Fox this afternoon, as well as from Captain Jack Nexstar, president of the International Federation of Airline Pilots, on Wednesday. And you're all aware we moved up the agenda a bit, so you'll be able to, I think based on the agenda, I felt like it was possible that we'd be done by Wednesday night. And then Thursday morning you can have breakfast and depart if we're done. So, as Michael Collins orbited above the moon, he was able to see the lunar module, but he was too far above the surface to actually see Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin making history with their footsteps. Collins may have not been visible to his colleagues on the moon, but he always was there supporting them, leading by his service to others. That shared mental model we keep talking about. The same is true for ALPA members. We're there for each other to respond in real time to an aviation security issue, taking an after-hour call from a colleague in need, or comb through a collective bargaining agreement to ensure every detail is in order. As we all know, it is difficult to overestimate the power, importance, and influence of union representation and a collectively bargained agreement. It's fundamental to the dignity of work. And speaking of the dignity of work, ALPA is keenly aware of I'm deeply troubled by it anyway, but deeply troubled by the trend in anti-union activity. There's a tremendous amount of that happening. My brother Greg over there had to put up with things that I haven't seen since my earlier days, and I just don't get it, how in aviation in particular, which is reliant upon a safety culture, how intimidating pilots, including 3 firings, right, Greg? 3? 2 of which were organizing committee members, out-and-out threats, like, managers calling you and asking you how you vote. Did you really want that upgrade? I mean, it's crazy. I don't believe that in the 21st century there's a place for that anymore. So we just got to stop it, right? It shouldn't be part of any of our organizing drives. Pilots should have the respect to be able to make the decisions on whether or not they want to be represented or not. But the part that disturbs me the most, really, is just the intimidations, the threats, and the terminations. It's just makes no sense to me. It's just, in aviation, it's dangerous. It's got to stop. Been carrying that to DC as well. So, however, I know that everyone here shares my confidence that unionism is stronger than any management intimidation. It takes grit and determination and sometimes more courage than we think is possible to muster, but workers will prevail. We must prevail. Because of the safety that unionization imbues on air transportation, we must prevail. Because of the dignity of work that only a union contract brings employees, we must prevail. And for the future of the piloting profession, we must prevail. And you know what? We're winning. We're winning. May not be every single time, but each time moves us a little bit more forward. So, in April, the ranks of union pilots became even stronger when the National Mediation Board certified ALPA as the bargaining representative for the pilots at Western Global Airlines. In the face of severe anti-union pressure, a strong majority of Western Global pilots stood up to the intimidation and said yes. Now, Western Global pilots will, for the first time, benefit from the dignity of work that only a collective bargaining agreement provides. We don't agonize, we organize here. And we had the sights set on this. When they came to us, by the way. We didn't come to them, they came to us. And when I saw what they are, again, boy, you'd have been really proud. They're strong people over there. But the stable career and the safety culture that union representation makes possible are also fundamental in attracting a more diverse and inclusive aviation workforce for the future, which is a priority of mine and a top issue for ALPA. On April the 8th, ALPA sent a letter to Department of Transportation Secretary Buttigieg outlining actions that the U.S. government can take to make becoming an airline pilot more accessible to underrepresented communities while maintaining the qualification and training standards that has made flying so safe. We presented recommendations including work to align federal funding support for the education required to become an airline pilot with that of other highly skilled professionals. We also provided suggestions to make aviation education more accessible to minorities and underrepresented groups. Now, at all levels and in every way, ALPA leaders are committed to fostering a culture that not only attracts all individuals, irrespective of race, gender, religion, natural origin, sexual orientation, or other diversity traits, but one in which we can all thrive. The President's Committee for Diversity and Inclusion has created a repository of information for our members in its first year. The committee has made more initiatives in the works going forward, including coordinating with ALPA's Education Committee to develop outreach programs for the next generation of airline pilots and ALPA members. As we go forward, I feel tremendously proud and hopeful. Overcoming the public health toll and the economic consequences of COVID-19 pandemic has been among the toughest challenges this union has ever faced. And while we don't have the aircraft in the gate just yet, we've got the airport in sight. But as you all know, we're about to enter a critical phase of flight that requires the greatest concentration. And the same holds true of the work that we have to do together to land a strong public health and economic recovery. This is not over yet, far from it. But we are on the rise. And we will need to be careful, but what gives me the greatest hope is each of you, your engagement, and all that of your members. And when I first took office, one of my top goals was to bring about a greater pilot engagement and participation at every level within the union. Flight Finder was one of the examples and tools to help facilitate that. But together we've done that. You've done that, really. Our union's historic levels of participation are a tribute to each of you. You have led by example. Because of your commitment, ALPA's call to action, participation hit a record in 2020. You ready for this? with members and others, 500,000 actions. In 2020, ALPA pilots filed more than 4,500 DART reports to raise issues of concern with our union leaders. We generated more than 2 million unique page views on ALPA.org. And ALPA's Ready for Takeoff initiative, which prompted more than 8 million actions in 2020, resulted in 55 million impressions in the nation's busiest media markets. These record-shattering numbers and actions by our members and the public to further ALPA's pilot partisan agenda gives me tremendous hope. Now, as its pilot, Michael Collins orbited the moon for more than 21 hours alone in Apollo 11 command module, while Armstrong and Aldrin were on the surface. Each time the spacecraft circled the dark side of the moon, Collins lost contact with Mission Control at Houston. Far from feeling alone or abandoned, he said, "I feel very much a part of what's taking place on the lunar surface." During the pandemic, many of us have felt alone. Many of our members have felt alone. But what we have all learned is what the union movement and each of you as labor leaders have known all along. There is strength in unity. Count on each other, learn from each other, come together as one, and anything is possible, even overcoming a global pandemic. And finally, we're not there yet, but we're off. Because of you and every member of this mighty union, we're on a firm heading to end the pandemic and drive the economic recovery in the United States and Canada. And together, ALPA pilots will continue to lead our nations to destinations we never thought possible to reach. Thanks very much for your attention this morning. Thanks.